Oral History Project. Today I will be interviewing my grandmother, Donna Holt. Here we go. So, how is your life different as a child than it is for children today?
Ciara, I grew up on a dairy farm, and everyone helped with chores. We planted a garden, we tilled it, we weeded it, we harvested the produce. We didn't go to the grocery store except for products that we did not grow in our area, such as we had to go buy sugar or coffee or flour. We had to buy syrup. Sometimes we liked syrup to go on pancakes, and cleaning supplies and things like that. But we raised our animals. We raised them for meat. We raised chicken, pork, beef. We had milk. We had butter. We had vegetables and fruit trees and grapevines, and we made our own jellies and jams. And we actually took time and played outside. We rode horses. For recreation, we would go to the pond and go fishing and ride our horses. And we didn't have things like a television we used radio really to keep in touch and for our entertainment in the evening. We made our own clothes, and we rarely had to purchase anything from a store. So,
how has family life changed?
Family life has changed because when we were on the dairy farm, my father worked there on the farm, and the family unit was most always together. While my brother and I were younger, my mother was always at home as well. Only when we were much older did my mom become teacher's age at Pittsburgh Elementary. We worked together, we played together, we went on vacation maybe 1 week a year. We were always involved in church and visited our grandparents, aunts and uncles on the weekends, on Sundays. We ate together. We ate breakfast, lunch, and dinner together every day, although we called it breakfast, dinner, and supper. But that's changed. And so we were always, at our mealtime, always thanking God for our food and for our many blessings.
How many years did you attend school?
I attended school for 12 years at Pittsburgh, and then went for a few months to Hardbarger Business School in Raleigh. Then, as the opportunity allowed, I attended NC State and took courses there while I was working and trying to raise a family.
Was everyone in your family able to attend school, and to what levels? Why or why not?
Dad did have the opportunity, for example, to go to Lewisburg College after high school. However, that was not his passion, so after a few weeks he returned home to the farm and started working. Mom completed 12 years of high school and then went to Richmond, Virginia, to an institute for business, and there she completed some training and worked until her marriage to Dad. My brother graduated from the 2-year agricultural program at NC State University. So everybody in my family had some kind of higher education after high school.
Which wars do you remember?
I really don't remember too many details about it, but I remember that World War II, I had 2 uncles who were overseas during those wars. They were away and not at home for what seemed like long periods of time. My father was not drafted then, as he was working on the farm. And then I guess maybe I remember some of the Vietnam era, when many of the young people that I grew up with in high school went off to Vietnam. But my husband, Bobby, was not drafted because he was also working on the farm. He got an exemption. So those 2 wars, I guess, were the really 2 wars that I remember a lot about. And currently, then, we have wars going on that we have people that have been involved with, but those were the historical wars that I remember something about. And I can remember my uncles coming back and telling about their experiences. I can remember Uncle Roy, for example, saying that he drove a tanker truck with gasoline in World War II over in Germany, and he remembered that so many of his buddies were killed during that time.
Do you remember where or were What were you doing? And your reaction to critical news of the 20th century, like Kennedy's assassination, the man on the moon, or the Iran hostage crisis, as examples.
Well, for example, I can tell you that I was working at a bank in Apex at the time of Kennedy's assassination. And that day during my lunch hour, I had gone down the street. The bank was on the street there, but I had gone down the street to get a haircut. And I was sitting in the chair at the beauty salon getting my hair cut when the news came over the radio and television about Kennedy being assassinated. And everybody was just awestruck and just really couldn't hardly believe what had happened.
How has the role of women in the home, workplace, and community changed in your lifetime?
The role of women, typically women did not assume roles equal to men when I was graduating and in high school. Men were expected to be the primary breadwinners. They were expected to be the head of the family, and women were a supportive role to the men. Most everybody during that era, when I was in high school, the ladies would go to school after high school, go to college, and were typically nurses or teachers or secretaries and homemakers. That was kind of the role that women were, and that certainly has changed over the years, because women now can be managers, or they can be anything they want to be today, and it certainly was not the case when I was growing up.
How has this community, or the new one you grow up, or the one you grew up in, changed since you were a child?
We were predominantly a farm community where I grew up here in Chatham County, and the church maybe was the center of our social life. Most of those farms now, a lot of them have been sold and becoming more urban area. Church is a focus for a lot of people, but then there are many people who have kind of seemingly not let church be the center of their life. And I think the whole society is changing, but I have been a working person all of my life, and so that leads into the next question I think that you're about to ask.
What kind of work did you do in your lifetime?
Because of the necessity to help support my family, I had to work outside the home. First, at a late afternoon job with the Department of Motor Vehicles. And then while I was doing that, it was like a temporary job, and it was just a part-time job for about 4 hours each night. Then I met a lady who helped me obtain a job as a teller at Apex at a bank. And at the time that I went there to be a teller, I was the youngest teller they had ever hired. And so I was a young person and just starting out, and I really appreciated that job. But women were not ever managers. Usually women were tellers or had lesser roles than being managers. And later I obtained a job with the UNC department and the payroll department at UNC. And there were all women workers there, but the managers there, again, were men. So later, in a job with the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, women were assistants and were female assistants to the managers, who were typically men. However, I completed about 35 plus years with the state, and all roles now are open to all family members and all ages and men and women.
Who are the politicians and or causes you can remember supporting?
I just mentioned that I worked with vocational rehabilitation, and so one of the causes that I really became quite passionate about was an opportunity for people who have disabilities to be more integrated into society. So the gentleman that I was a co-worker with, we began going to the General Assembly and going to politicians to seek opportunities to make programs and buildings and facilities more accessible to people with disabilities so that they would have a better opportunity for education and employment. So in the early 60s, we recognized that structures were often prevented people who had severe limitations from getting into buildings, parks, or being able to drive vehicles and have training opportunities. So we worked for many years to get legislation and building codes changed so that the doors would be opened for people who had severe disabilities to be a part of the general community, so that they could go to restaurants, they could go to bathrooms, they could go into all kinds of public places with accommodations, such as the ramps you see that are built on buildings that are maybe adjacent to steps, but people who used wheelchairs, for example, could not get up into the building. So we lobbied and worked with the General Assembly in North Carolina and with the attempts throughout the nation to make society in general more accessible to people with disabilities.
What invention or technical advancement has had the most dramatic impact on your life?
There's so many, but I guess maybe when I think about inventions, I think about going to my grandparents' home years ago when I was a little girl. They lived in a home that had no electricity, no running water, no bathroom in their home. And I can recall, for example, reading by a kerosene lamp in their home, using outhouses, pulling water in a bucket up from the well. They had wood-fired stove, wood-burning stove. They had fireplaces. And I used to stay with them for about a week every summer. And that was kind of a real eye-opening experience, to looking at all of the technology that's changed since that point in time today, where we have all of these conveniences within our homes. Our homes are now so comfortable, and I guess even one of the greatest things is the computers, because computers run everything that we have these days. We think about our microwaves, we think about our stoves, our dishwashers, our cars, our ability to communicate. Everything is run by a computer. So I would say probably a computer is the very greatest of the issues we've had today.
How have clothing styles changed over the years?
Ooh, clothing styles. Well, I'll tell you, when I was a young girl, and even until I was maybe about probably 20, 21, or 22, women only wore dresses and skirts and blouses or suits. They never wore pants. And so it was a real change for me when I was in the working world and you were allowed to wear pants to work as a woman. So clothing styles have significantly changed. And used to, when I was a little girl, everybody in church wore a hat on Sunday. And nobody hardly ever wears a hat anymore on Sunday to church. But clothing styles, and especially women, never, even when they started wearing pants, never wore blue jeans. And now we all wear blue jeans. I can remember in high school, even the boys, when they got blue jeans or had blue jeans and wore them to school and they got a hole in the blue jeans, they had it all patched up. My mama used to patch up my brother's blue jeans. He would take an old pair and take a piece from the old pair and put it in the new pair and patch it up, and he went right on to school. But now kids wear jeans with holes in them. So styles have significantly changed, and we always were covered up as women and young girls. We were covered up, and now the styles have changed so that people are less covered, I suppose is the best way to say it. And we never wore short shorts out anywhere or anything like that. So.
This isn't a question, but I want to know, did you or your mom ever make your clothes?
We made everything we wore until I was probably a teenager. It was rare for me to have anything purchased. In fact, when we would get on the farm, we would get sacks of feed that came in, and every time we got a new load of feed, and we would go, and my cousins and I, we would go and find out which sacks we wanted, because sometimes we would have clothes or pajamas or gowns and that kind of thing that we wore at night made out of the feed sacks. And as a girl, my grandmother made clothes for me as a child, and then as I grew older, I began to sew and start making clothes for myself and my mom. So we rarely had anything bought. If we had something bought, it was usually like a coat or a pair of shoes or something like that. We made most everything that we wore.
How has music changed over the years? Which styles and artists were/are your most beloved?
Well, I guess as a child, I remember how much we listened to the radio and things like Bing Crosby and the Tommy Dorsey Band, and swing music was really something that was important. And I can remember my mother doing the now I can't even think of what it was called, but it was I'll have to skip that one. But anyway, I remember just good classical kind of music is what we were always exposed to as children. And now the rock music and the hard rock and those kinds of things, I don't enjoy those as well. I really enjoy just good, soft, clean, classical kind of music, as opposed to all the loud, big band, drum kind of things. It was always a soft, pleasing type music that I enjoyed the most. However, as a musician and playing music, I can play most all kinds of things.
So the last question is, what advice would you give to future generations?
My advice to future generations is to stop and listen and look at what's in the world, what opportunities, pray, seek a relationship with God, to extend your education so that you have a career, and it doesn't have to always be the college degree necessarily. If you can find something that you like to do that will provide an income, if it's a trade. Right now in this country, there are so many times that we need trade kind of work, and it's hard to find because everybody doesn't want to be a plumber or everybody doesn't want to be an electrician. Some of those jobs that we think are maybe a little dirty or hard, but find something that you enjoy and develop that as a career and a passion.
All right, that's the end. Thank you.